My name's Tony Gard. I'm from the Movement for Justice. The Movement for Justice was set up with the aim of building an independent, integrated civil rights and immigrant rights movement in order principally to fight against the racist scapegoating of immigrants and of the black and Asian communities in general. That's been our aim and that's been our purpose. The majority of our members are refugees, immigrants, asylum seekers, with and without papers, with and without status. And certainly the great majority of our active members. An increasing number of our members are actually former detainees, and a growing number are current detainees. I've been asked to apologise for one of our members who would have been here on the platform with Maimouna and myself, Juliet Akeo, who anybody who was on the Yarls Wood demonstration last time, or I think the time before, would have heard Juliet speaking from inside to the demonstrators outside. She was one of the main organisers of the Movement for Justice group in Yarls Wood, and the most recent of those people who's been released. Unfortunately, she's in hospital today. She was knocked over on an underground escalator yesterday and suffered a bad leg injury. So she can't be here, and she's very upset. She very much wanted to be here. But what Juliet has done, what Maimouna has done, Maimouna wasn't part of Movement for Justice until she left Yarls Wood, but was organising people inside Yarls Wood, unknown to us at that point. And what they represent is the fact that what we put on the submission that we made to the parliamentary inquiry into detention last year, the title we used for that submission was "The Inevitability of Resistance and the Urgency of Abolition." Because where there is detention, there will be resistance. John MacDonald, the new Shadow Chancellor, made that point in the debate on immigration detention on the 9th of September. The first time there was a full parliamentary debate on the issue of immigration detention. He said he welcomed the proposals from the inquiry, which are basically a 28-day time limit and statutory exclusion of all the categories of vulnerable people, pregnant women, victims of torture and so on. But and he supported them, but he wanted more. He wanted the places shut down. He wanted detention centres shut down. They're brutal. They shouldn't exist. And he summed up his comments by saying, "Harmondsworth in my constituency has been burnt down twice. The self-harm continues. The unrest continues. There will be more. There will be more riots. They will continue. This is a brutal system. It has to be ended. There has to be a better way of treating human beings." I think we're here today because of the struggles are going on by migrants. I'm using the word migrant deliberately because we simply do not accept the distinction between refugees and economic migrants. If Wilf had stayed a bit longer, I was going to ask him, how do you distinguish? How do you go to Calais and distinguish between an economic migrant and a refugee? How do you distinguish from somebody from Syria or Iraq or Afghanistan or Sudan who is a migrant, immigrant, who is a refugee, who is an asylum seeker? Most of our members have been both in the course of their lives. So we don't make that distinction, but we do see that the enormous focus on immigrant rights now and on what's being labelled a refugee crisis and the enormous wave of support that has welled up since August, not just in Britain, but across Europe, is a response to a struggle by the migrants themselves. The famous Declaration of American Independence, usually taken as being a statement of the foundation principles of Western democracy, starts off with those famous words that we accept these truths, that all men are created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights, including the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the most important force in Europe that's fighting for those fundamental democratic rights across Europe now are two groups of people. The migrants, who are declaring open borders, who are opening the borders in practice, pulling them down where need be. And the people in detention centres who, as the detention centres have got bigger and have brought in more people, have mounted more and more resistance. In Movement for Justice, we always start our meetings with some form of study, and one of our main studies has been on the life of Frederick Douglass, the American black abolitionist leader in the 19th century, and a speech of his where he quoted from a poem, I think it was by Byron, "He who would be free must himself strike the first blow." And the people in detention and the people at the borders are themselves striking the first blow. We have understood that if we're going to shut down detention, there has to be a movement inside and outside detention working together. There has to be a movement in which detainees and former detainees are playing not just a role, but the leading role. We don't adopt the view of what Frederick Douglass himself described as abolitionists who are quite happy to have coloured folk, as he put it, holding the coats at the back of a room. Our demonstrations surround Harmondsworth, surround Colnbrook, surround Yarls Wood, have been demonstrations. Everybody who knows has been there knows. The detainees outside, ex-detainees outside, and the detainees inside are leading those demonstrations. The last demonstration, the demonstration inside, started before we ever got round to within view of the windows, and that is what is so powerful. And what is also so powerful is where they've brought together people from so many different countries and so many different continents. We got the inspiration for Surround Harmondsworth from the detainees in Harmondsworth, who in May last year, we weren't at that point in contact with any of them, but many of them were in contact with Detention Action or with other organisations. They knew about the case that Sonal was involved in against Fast Track, and in May they simply started occupying the courtyards and declaring protests and hunger strikes demanding the end of Fast Track in Harmondsworth and in Colnbrook, and those spread to a whole number of other men's detention centres over the next few weeks. And